For the start, imagine two beach chairs next to a lake on a sandy beach. I'll try to intersperse my presentation with some pictures I'll describe, but it all has to do with kind of what we do at the end of our lives and how we take care of others. If you were in on my other presentation, we talked about kind of my concept of living the good life. And I think part of what living the good life is about is being prepared. Life changes quickly. So just last week, my wife had prepared everything for our daughter's 37th birthday. We had the table set. We had 12 people coming. And we are at the last stage. People are on their way. My wife turns, trips on a throw rug, get your throw rugs out of the house, falls down, breaks her arm. So we jump in the car. We're off to the emergency room as people are showing up to have the birthday party at our house because we couldn't get anybody because they were driving in their cars. So they went ahead and had a party while my wife was being tended to. Now she's better, but we had to just cancel the next 12 weeks of activities that we had planned. And one of the things she said was on the way to the hospital in big pain, but she said, "I'm so glad we have everything ready and taken care of." I said, "Well, you're not going to die today. You just probably broke your arm." But still, things change. So I just want to give you some thoughts about that. My usual disclaimer, this is a picture of Rodin's The Thinker. So think on this. I am not a financial planner. I'm not a lawyer. I am not your banker. I'm not your kids, but I'm going to try to give you some advice, some thoughts to think about that you may need to or want to talk to those professionals in your life. So as we go along, realize that I can't see you. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat, and Sean can relay it to me. Or at the end, we'll have some time for questions. And if I talk too fast, make sure and let Sean know because I tend to do that. And I had an extra coffee this morning, so we'll go from there. Oh, the good life. Full of fun seems to be the ideal. Didn't we all love to listen to Tony Bennett? And there he is again. So I think planning for the end of days is an important part. Americans are fairly unique in not wanting to think about what happens when they're gone. Most of the rest of the world does that, and as we experience the glories of the world, this is a mosque in Istanbul. I've been very fortunate. My wife and I said this was our travel year, which now that she's broken her arm was probably a good thing. So we had a chance to do some traveling this year, and I was taken by a lot of the natural beauty that we saw, sunsets, sunrises, and also makes you think about then what's going to happen when I'm gone? How do I preserve that line in the sand? So people give back, I think, for a number of reasons. We give back to change lives of those following us, whether that's our kids, whether that's our favorite organizations, whether that's the church. We give to build community. I think we see the world getting more fragmented. And one of the things that I think we can do with our charity at the end of our lives is to help build the community that's left when we're gone, to help fund the futures of others. Even with POB, the programs for children, programs for dogs and cats, whatever it may be that touches your heart, we help to provide that and to fulfill a promise. Many of us have said, I know I have, at one or two times in my life, boy, when I'm able to, I want to continue to give this. I've made a promise to give back. And that's really a good part of being a good citizen. So we do those things. And part of that is just realizing this is the longest bridge in the world. It's actually on the straits, the Andean Straits, on the way between Asia and Europe. And it's 7 some miles long. It's quite imposing, but all of it's passing, right? So I use this picture because I like to think of us as passing from one side to the other, perhaps. I don't think the boatsman on the River Styx works anymore. It's a 12-lane highway of a huge suspension bridge to get us to the other side. So today I want to talk a little bit about how, if we've decided we want to do something, how do we pay for that? How do we fund it? There are ways, regardless, I'm not talking here about being a multimillionaire. I'm certainly not. I've worked in nonprofits all my life, and you know that. But there are ways for people of means that they have figured out tax advantaged and leveraged ways of giving that those of us who are regular people may also think about them. So I want to talk about 2 different kind of aspects: what we can do while we're here, and what we can do when we're gone. So let's talk about giving while you live. Now, this is living it up. This is me in one of the best preserved burial chambers in the Valley of the Kings. And they decided that I am wearing a typical Egyptian headdress because they thought I looked very much like a pharaoh. I don't think I do, but what happened with the pharaohs, and you may see, you can't in this photo on my right hand side, you can see part of the paintings aren't done. Well, what happened was they worked on the king's tombs while they were alive. The moment they died, they quit because they had to start on the new king's tombs. So part of giving while you live is to make sure that your tomb is fully decorated when you're gone. And how do we do that? Well, one of the things that we all can just do is just write a check. And that's great. And thank you, and thank me, and thank Nick, and thank everyone who does that, because we keep our favorite organizations afloat and planning for the future. But there may be some other ways to think about that might allow you to give more while costing you less. For example, if you're 70 and a half, don't give me a show of hands. You all look pretty young, but so for your mom and dad, be sure and tell them that once you hit 70 and a half, as much as you can, make your gifts to charity from your, if you have pre-tax accounts, if you have an IRA, if you have a tax deferred program like a 403B or a 401k you might have had when you worked. If you have money that was put in without being taxed, that money is going to be taxed when it comes out, one way or the other. There's really hardly any way to avoid it. One of the ways that you can avoid taxation on those funds is you can make a direct gift to charity from pre-tax accounts. It's called a qualified charitable distribution, or a QCD for short. Your advisor, for if you have a fund like that, would know what a QCD is. But if you are 70 and a half and you're thinking about writing a check, you should check first with your advisor to make sure that you think about giving those from pre-tax accounts, because you'll be able to give the full amount. Now, the check can actually come to you, made payable to the charity, and you can present it yourself, but it has to go, it can't be payable to you and then you pay the charity. It'll be taxed on its way out. So that's one thing to think about. And by golly, I know I look very young to the rest of you, but I'm 70 and a half. So now that's my strategy is all my gifts to charity will be a check from Tiacraft from my pre-tax account, because it'll help me avoid taxation, but it'll also mean that I can give more. So that $1,000 that I can give will be $1,000, not $1,000 that's taxed to me that I write a check for that becomes $750. So think about that. If there's anything today, take that with you, that if you're 70 and a half, talk with your fund manager to make sure that you can make your cash gifts to charity from your pre-tax accounts. One next thing, just in case, now for your grandparents who might happen to be 73 or more, when you turn 73, you have to take annual distributions, your required minimum distributions, your RMD, which they will know about. If you make a qualified charitable distribution, that also can count towards your required minimum distribution. So if you're taking money out that you maybe don't need all of that, but you have to because it's calculated based on your age, if you make a gift to charity, that can also count towards the required minimum that you have to take out every year. A little complicated, but your advisor can help you with that. Just remember, RMD is what you take out when you're 73, and a QCD is what you can use to give to charity. Don't you just love acronyms? Aren't they great? Now, there are other ways that some of us can give. For example, my parents, when I was little, and many people did because it was the thing to do, it was marketed through Gerber baby food, took out baby life insurance policies. Well, I am nobody's baby anymore for sure, but I still have a small policy my parents took out when I was, I don't know, 2 years old. I'm not sure what it was supposed to fund. It's grown over these 70 years to be about $10,000. Now, I don't really need that. I don't need that $10,000. So if I have a life insurance policy like that I don't need, I can gift that policy to charity. And you will, if you're able to itemize your tax deductions, you will be able to deduct what's called the surrender value of that policy, meaning kind of its actual cash value that you can deduct. Or if nothing else, you'll know that the charity can hold that if they choose to, and upon your death would get the face value. And that's a good way to give. And some of us may have, over time, and back 25, 30 years ago, people pushed insurance so much that some people, like my father-in-law just turned 100 years old last month. He has macular degeneration badly enough that he's pretty much blind. He does the books from Library of Congress that keeps him going, and music and other podcast kind of things come to him that way. But he has like 6 different life insurance policies, and so we've talked to him about signing one over to the church. He's the last. His wife preceded him in death, and why don't you give some of this away to the charities that you'd like to favor, and they'll be able to benefit from that. If you have stocks you bought a long time ago, you know that if you cash in those stocks, you're going to be taxed on them at the capital gains rate. If you think about making a gift and you have stocks like that, even if it's a small amount, you might think about gifting those to a charity, because you will be able to then avoid the capital gains stock appreciation tax. If you have a piece of property, I'm a farm kid, so I know my dad, we had like a 2-acre plot that was far away. He'd bought it at an auction sometime, and we gave that to charity because we didn't need it. It was too far away from the farm. And that was a way of helping the charity that we supported, which is a Council for the Aging. And also, there may be assets you might have. There may be something you don't use anymore. Gosh, I don't drive anymore, so gosh, that Mercedes Benz in the parking lot, maybe I'll gift it to charity versus trying to sell it. Those are other ways kind of to think about making a gift. There's a beautiful sunrise over the Bosphorus. Sunrises and sunsets have a uniquely particular view about them. I've not seen a sunrise that looks like a sunset, and I'm quite a connoisseur of both. So sunrises tend to be the sun coming up with lots of rays coming out of it, and dark clouds and light clouds, as this one is, as it wipes away the darkness, where a sunset tends to be more soothing in broad colors. And I kind of think that kind of is kind of an aphorism for life. You come in, pushing away the darkness, kicking and screaming, and you go out hopefully with bright colors and a big glow. So now let's talk for a minute about when we're gone. When we're gone, we don't need it. So what are we going to do with it? This is the good life planning, I think. If we think about our kids and our grandkids, and maybe we don't have any heirs and assigns, like my father-in-law has outlived half of his kids even. So we think about what we wish to do. If we don't have any planning done, then you will fall back into what the government will decide what happens with what's left from you, who gets it, how it's distributed, what happens to it. And that's okay, but I don't think that's an active way of being a good part of a steward of what you have, whether it's little or a lot. So there are ways that when you're gone, is one of the ways that most of us will give. 80% of gifts upon death come by will, through a beneficiary designation. It's a very simple bit of language in your will that says, I wish to give, and we'll talk about that in a minute, a little more detail. Again, if you pass away and you have pre-tax retirement accounts, if you die, most of what I have is in the pre-tax retirement accounts I built up while I worked at a college. So if whatever's in there when I die will be taxed upon distribution. Most people in America right now, because they tend to have their retirements in pre-tax accounts, will find that they're their richest when they're not here. That your final tax return will put you in the highest tax bracket in which you've ever been. Now, it'll be hard to enjoy that. Maybe we can look down from the other side and go, bingo, I made the 35% tax bracket. But that also means that you're spending a lot of money. So if you wish to give money to charity in your will, and if you have pre-tax retirement accounts, make sure that it specifies, when you have listed your gifts to charity, specify that they come from your pre-tax retirement accounts. Because otherwise, without those instructions, what happens to your estate is it all flows into one pot and distributed out. That means it will be taxed before it gets into your estate. So if you specify that in your will, it's a very simple piece of language. Whoever helps you with your will, if they didn't insert it, can insert it in 10 seconds. That will make sure that your estate isn't taxed on that, and you can make those gifts pre-tax. It's really the only way. Otherwise, whatever is in your IRA when you die will be taxed. There's no way around it except for giving to charity. So think about, if you have the difference, and you have heirs, that children, grandchildren you wish to help out with a college scholarship, as well as you want to give to, let's say, POV, because I'm here, then make sure that your pre-tax money goes to charity, the cash goes to the kids, because you've already been taxed on that money. It won't be taxed again. So it's just a simple way of doing it. Again, whether it's a lot of money or a little money, why pay taxes when you don't need to, right? And also make sure when people gift by will that we account for contingencies. Well, what if this? What if that? And that's kind of the hallmark of a good will. So you can say, I want to give to, this, unless, part of why we don't do wills, when we sat down with our attorney to redo our will this summer, you should check it every 5 years or so, just to make sure we hadn't accounted for a grandchild who was born. Here I am, physician, heal thyself. And also but we talk through the contingencies. What if your daughter, what if your son-in-law, what if this happens? And it's kind of like, you get a little choked up thinking about it. But as our attorney talked us through it, it's part of doing the right thing. You plan when you buy a house, you plan when you sell a car, you should also plan what happens upon your demise. So if you give through your will, you can give an amount, $10,000 to this or that. You can give a percentage. Now, what my wife and I have done is we've set, because we don't know how much will be left, maybe nothing, maybe a lot, that we want to give a certain percent to charity, and here's how we want to break it out. So 5% of our estate, 10% of our estate will go to charity, and of that amount, we break it out this way amongst, we have like 3 charities we like to support. So a percentage is good, because as your estate leaves, it goes up and down, and then you'll know that you're still giving that percentage of amount. Again, you can leave an item or an asset to a charity. If you leave an item, make sure that they can use it or they want it. When I was at the college, every attorney in town wanted to give us their full collection of their law library, which are mostly out of date, and we didn't know what to even do with them. So, but then again, there are items that charities can use and can be very beneficial to them, that may be related to their mission, or know that they may turn around and resell that and convert it into cash. There's a statement that's usually attached to your will that has to do with what with what is callously called the residue of your estate. So you give the house to this and this to that. Well, if there are things that you didn't account for, that's considered to be the remainder or the residue. You can always list a charity to receive the residue of your estate. That might be the furnishings of a house. It might be whatever is not accounted for, and that might help them as they can resell that and use it to help support their mission of service in your community. So there are creative ways of thinking about it. Like, our daughter doesn't want most of the stuff in our house. She's mid-century modern, and we're more early 20th century. So she's like, sorry, Dad, I don't want any of that. So that becomes something we can gift to charity, because they can turn around and sell it. My daughter doesn't have to deal with it. She doesn't want our house. So they just bought a house. So we can use our house as a gift when we pass. And then she can have the cash, versus making her dealing with the house while we've given our cash to charity. So it's just thinking about the best way to give to fit your needs. And it's always good. This is a picture of myself with my beautiful granddaughter, Willa, who is 3 years old now and thinks she runs the world. She certainly runs me. My back hurts so much from being twisted around that little finger, I can't even tell you. But always make sure that you think about, you involve your heirs as you make charity. It's a wonderful way of sharing family values with your kids and grandkids. And I've had a number of meetings where people have brought their children, grandchildren with them as they discuss their charity, because they want the kids to know why it's important to give back and why it's important to fund the future. Now, there's another way I'm going to talk about just real quickly, and this would require you talking to other people who are specialists in their area. There's a way of giving now and giving later. In the parlance, it's called a split interest gift. What that means is I make an irrevocable gift now and I retain some value for myself. Probably the number one way that people do this is through what's called a charitable annuity or a charitable gift annuity. And what that says is I transfer something to cash. So I give you $10,000 now, and in return, you pay me a certain amount every quarter for the rest of my life, or the rest of my life and my spouse's life. It's a way of making a gift now. The charity doesn't see money, right? the way it's calculated is they will pay you a rate of return based upon your age. I have a friend who's 101 and a half, and she's concerned about her income. And we just showed her that if she was to do an annuity, she would get 9.3% tax return, tax-free return on her gift for her lifetime, and then she would know that that money would go to support the charity that she's interested in. So it's something that you can talk through with your financial advisor. It's called a charitable gift annuity, and that way you have irrevocably given away that money, but you receive payments for life. So, if you're like my wife, whose dad is 100 years old, my parents both lived to be 93. Actuarially, I should not live to be more than about 78. So maybe I can even actually come out ahead in this deal, right? But at the end of the day, the calculations are such that if I give $5,000 to charity through a charitable gift annuity, and I will receive payments for life, that at the end of the day, they should receive about 50% of that money. That's kind of how the rates are worked out. And there's a thing called the American Council on Gift Annuities that work on all this. So it's a way of making a gift while still having some income for life. Okay, now this is the last most complicated thing I'm going to talk about. Last year, the federal government did a thing called the Secure Act 2.0. One of the things that they allowed you to do then is to make a one-time withdrawal from your pre-tax funds, so your retirement accounts, and you can fund a split interest gift. You can fund a charitable gift annuity up to $50,000. So you won't get a tax deduction. The income you receive will be ordinary income. But and I looked at the numbers and I read a couple of reports. It looks like for most of us, it'd be a good way to do it. So if you're thinking of funding an annuity, look into doing it through a qualified charitable distribution if you're over 70 years old, because it may be a tax leveraged way for you to make that gift, still get the lifetime payment. So again, someone you will talk to who's your fund manager, is called a QCD funded CGA. How about that? You fund a qualified charitable distribution that funds a charitable gift annuity, and it's part of the Secure Act. Now, there's another thing you can do with a home, which is really interesting, where I can give my home to charity right now, which, if I plan on living in it forever, I can continue to live in my home. I'll get an immediate tax deduction based on the value I retained for the life of living in that home. And then when I pass, or when I'm last to die, if it's myself and my spouse, then my house goes to charity. And that's something kind of attractive to my wife and I, because we've got a house, our daughter doesn't want it. We might be able to use that tax deduction now, continue to live in it, and know that it's going to go to charity when we pass. So again, your advisor would know more about life estates, but it's something to think about if you have a home and don't know what to do with it, right? This is a picture of a beautiful sunrise. This is over Luxor in Egypt. My wife and I went ballooning there in February as part of our tour of Egypt and Jordan. And these are balloons landing in a beautiful sunset. It has nothing at all to do with what I'm talking about, but I thought it was a nice picture and give you a little break after we've been talking about all this complicated stuff. So take a moment and a deep breath, pretend you're in a balloon in a beautiful sunrise. And okay, now we'll get back to it. Whoops. Now remember, it's important for all of us every few years, or if something changes in your life, to revisit your will. That's all. Think about the assets you have and whether they're things that your heirs want or don't want, or whether they are not accounted for when you pass, and figure out something to do with them. If you go to Goodwill, my daughter is a kind of we call it Goodwill hunting. She's kind of a secondary shopper. And you see a lot of things when you walk in, you think this was cleaned out of somebody's house because the kids didn't want it. And, it kind of makes it sad. Maybe that's the best thing to do, but if not, it's going to end up at Goodwill or Salvation Army or the POV shops. So if you want something to happen with those assets, you got to think about it up front, because other people don't know. I talked to a friend who has one of 5 children. They were born and raised Catholic. They have all gone their separate ways religiously. Only one has stayed Catholic, and they're everything from Druids to Protestants. And if their mom hadn't decided what to do with their funeral planning, they said, I don't know what we would have done. We all would have done what we thought was the right thing, but we're in vastly different places now. And it's the same thing with assets. If you want something to happen to something, write it down. And then that will happen. And also make sure, remember your bucket list. Now there's a picture on this slide that's kind of hard to see. It's my wife and I in Africa last year. She is looking down with a kind of an appearance of fright on her face and pushing against my chest because there's a bull elephant behind us that's doing kind of one of these bluff charges. So my wife's plan is that she doesn't have to outrun the elephant. She just has to outrun me. And she is positioned to push me backwards into the elephant so that she can get away. So and that was our first thing on our bucket list when we retired, was to go to Africa. So what's your bucket list? It doesn't have to be going to Africa. What do you want to have happen before your demise? What do you want to have happen after your demise is another bucket list. What can I do with what I have? So keep your bucket list and revisit that on a regular basis, because one, it makes you feel good. And two, that way and can be comfortable living the good life, that what you want to have happen is going to happen. At the end of the day, this is a picture of my wife sitting on top of a sand dune at White Sands in New Mexico, one of the biggest sand dunes in the country. And she sat there for a long time, casting a very long shadow as the sun was behind her, because sometimes she has these moments where she gets in a place and she wants to sit there and experience it. The thing that I noticed was how my wife looks very diminutive on top of this sand dune, but she's casting a very long shadow. And at the end of the day, I hope that we all cast a shadow when we're gone, that people will look back and think, Perry, Nick, Karen, whoever, even Sean, he's really young, but someday, even Sean, they'll sit back and say, Sean cast a pretty long shadow. By having these town hall meetings, he helped people live a better life and have a smile on their face for the rest of the day. And that's an important thing too. So at the end of the day, legacy love. It's a picture. These are my two grandbabies, Owen, who is 6, and Willa, who is 3. We leave a legacy because we love our kids, we love our communities, we love our charities. And that's really my message for today. Give some thought, do your best thing. My last slide, which says thanks for listening, shows my wife and I aboard camels with our hands raised looking at the Great Pyramid of Cheops. I told her I wanted to come home and build one in my own yard for when I go, and she decided I was neither king nor pharaoh, and that wouldn't be appropriate. I couldn't even get a camel out of the deal. But thank you for listening. If you have questions you want to direct to me, me through Sean, through POB, and I'll try to address them. Again, I can't give you legal or tax advice, but and also I think we'll make the information available in such a way that if you want to see like the notes, what did he say about a QCD, RSVPQRS, all that alphabet soup, you'll have that available to you as well. So thank you for listening today. That's the end of what I have. If you have any questions, I'll address them if I can.